September has been atrocious. It's been one horrendous event after another, especially if you're someone that likes to keep up with the news. But in case you live outside the US, or in case the extreme censorship on different social medias under the Trump administration is working, let me catch you up. Now, before I fully dive into the video, I do want to mention if you hate everything that's happening in the US right now, attend the No King's Day 2.0 protest on October 18th, especially if you're someone that has white privilege. What better way to use your privilege than go to a protest? Police are shown to be way less hostile when there's a white crowd or white people at the front of the lines. Search it up if you don't believe me. But anyway, you can find a protest near you at nokings.org, and it'll also be linked in my description box below. There's so many protests already set up, so it shouldn't be too hard finding a protest near you. I know that not that many people know about the protests this time around because so much has been happening, and again, the censorship on social media has actually been working. I posted a video on one of my burner TikToks about the protests, and it only got 300 views compared to my usual amount, which would be 1,000 views. There had to be some censorship at play there, so I did want to let everyone know here about the protests. Now, without further ado, here's every single major event that happened in the US this September. First on the list, the US government has shut down. The Trump administration was planning to shut down the government at the end of the month, and for a while, no one knew much about it besides the fact that many would lose their jobs since the shutdown would call for cutting funding from thousands of jobs and laying off many workers. But just yesterday, Trump threatened to follow through with shutting down the government if Democrats didn't agree to ban all trans health care. This would include ending transitioning surgeries, Medicaid coverage for the trans community, and ban pride flags from public buildings. This is a huge deal. First of all, Nazi flags and Confederate flags aren't even banned, but pride flags, which are a symbol of happiness for a marginalized group, would be banned? That's just wrong. Also, banning trans surgeries, this would make it extremely hard for trans people to access healthcare. They would have to fly to other countries in order to feel comfortable in their bodies. That's not fair. Why are cis women allowed to get breast enhancement surgery, but a trans woman isn't allowed to do that just because she's born with different genitals? Why should someone's looks depend on what kind of healthcare they're supposed to get? That's dystopian. And if your excuse is thinking, it's okay to ban trans healthcare because, oh, it makes me uncomfortable, I'm going to remind you that's the exact same thing that racists used to say when they didn't want desegregation and having black people attend the same high school as them. That's what they would say about Ruby Bridges. Oh, it makes me uncomfortable. You're not that different from those racists, so seriously check yourself if you're someone that's saying that. Also, back to having to travel for surgeries. That's just not a viable option because a lot of trans people are not able to get a job because of discrimination against trans people. So how do you expect them to be able to have enough money to book a flight, book a hotel, pay for food, and even be able to take time off? Being able to pay to go to other countries is a privilege. Not everyone has the time and money for that. I'm really glad that the Democrat congressional leaders stood their ground when they met with him to discuss this topic. It really feels like there is no way of winning in this situation though, because either way, thousands of people lose their jobs and work with no pay, or thousands of people lose access to their health care. It's not good for anyone in the US. This is why transphobia hurts everyone. And do not take the propaganda that people are saying, oh, well, the Democrats are the one that's causing this shutdown because they didn't agree with Trump. No, we are not going to stand for that. We are not going to stand for anyone not being able to get health care. That's dystopian. Second on the list is Charlie Kirk's death. Charlie was shot at one of his debates on September 10th at Utah Valley University and then was pronounced dead about 30 minutes later after he had been rushed to the hospital. I'm sure we all know about this one since it even reached Europe and Asia. A lot of conservatives are starting to identify as Charlie Kirk, whatever that means. Not a real gender. Facts over feelings, conservatives. But jokes aside, conservatives, liberals, and leftists all quickly united under one topic. Charlie Kirk's death was probably a part of something bigger. Even Candace Owens said it herself. 2 days before his death, he was on video with Ben Shapiro, and suddenly Charlie mentioned something along the lines of how it feels like people are just blindly following Israel, and he wondered if people should question Israel. Ben just looked so shocked, like, oh, you're not supposed to ever say that. That was the look on Ben's face, because Charlie had been a huge advocate for Israel. He funded the Palestinian genocide, and he's a big part of why a lot of Gen Z conservatives are not pro-Palestinian. Netanyahu was one of the first people to say, pray for Charlie, 30 minutes before he even got shot. There were articles released calling for people to mourn Charlie the day before he died, and a journalism company from Israel had released an article that Charlie had already died an hour before he was actually pronounced dead. It has since been taken down, but the internet doesn't forget, so it wouldn't be so far-fetched to say that Israel saw him as a threat and decided to take him out. And even in the few weeks leading up to his death, Charlie started to pressure Trump for releasing the Epstein Files. And a few of Trump's victims that have publicly come out against him to speak about being sexually assaulted by him and Epstein have all mysteriously disappeared. So it wouldn't really be a coincidence if Trump was involved, especially since him and Netanyahu were one of the first people to somehow know that Charlie was already dead. Not officials, not police, not the hospital. Also, if it isn't convincing, just look at how happy Trump was the day after Charlie's death and announcing he found a cure to autism at Charlie's funeral. He does not care. Also, don't even get me started on how Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, didn't even shed a single tear when talking about Charlie. Instead, she was advertising how people should donate money to her even though she's already rich. This is all way too big to be just a coincidence. Number 3. In response to Charlie Kirk being killed, white supremacists have been making bomb threats to HBCUs, which stands for Historically Black Colleges or University, in case you're not familiar with the term. Even schools that aren't HBCUs, such as New York University, have received bomb threats. Mind you, the racism is so apparent because the face of the shooter wasn't even released at that time that the bomb threats were happening. We had no idea what their race was, but the racists just assumed, oh, if it's something bad that's happening, it's a black person that caused it. Or if someone got shot, then it's somehow from gang violence, as Charlie had said before his death, which is their code word for black people. It's basically a dog whistle. But that's just so hypocritical because look at who is at the face of every single school shooting. White men, yet they choose to punish black people and other people of color, all because of white people's own biases. They also punish trans people too and every other minority. And, lo and behold, it was a white man that shot Charlie Kirk. But this is a sad reality of being a person of color in the United States. You constantly get blamed for white people's wrongdoings. You're a scapegoat, and you never know when your life is in danger next. Because if a white man is having a bad day, it can mean it's your last day on Earth. Number 4. A 21-year-old black student at Delta State University, Trey Reed, was lynched just a couple of days after Charlie Kirk's death. On the morning of September 15th, he was found hanging from a tree by a rope tied around his neck. Authorities quickly closed the murder case, saying it's foul play, but we all know that's not the truth. That's just what they say when they think a person of color's life is not worth spending time for. We know it's not foul play. They just don't want to investigate because they're racist. Maybe it was one of their racist sons that got involved, so they're trying to cover it up. Maybe it was someone on their team. Also, a lot of times they have the evidence for the case not being foul play, but like I said, they're racist, so they're gonna just write it off with some random excuse because they don't think a person of color's life is worth spending time for, or they don't see it as a big deal because they don't see people of color as humans. Remember, the KKK could be anybody, including law enforcement. In fact, a lot of them are cops. That's why you never see cops and KKK in the same room. But that aside, it's not a coincidence that a black person gets murdered 5 days after Charlie Kirk's death. The far right is out for minorities' blood. They created a database for doxing every single person that disagreed with them over Charlie Kirk's death or didn't exactly feel sad. There were 20,000 submissions of names. They were cheering when they heard that the people that weren't sad about Charlie Kirk's death or had a different opinion from them about his death had gotten fired from their jobs. There's tension in the nation, and you already know who gets the blunt end of it. So I know it was someone on the far right that lynched Trey Reed. We all know it. The timing and the politics, that man was lynched. You can't convince me that it was foul play. You can't convince me that the police and investigating team weren't racist. You saw the difference in what happened when a white person is murdered versus a black person being murdered. The United Healthcare CEO that was shot, for example, as soon as he was shot, the police did a manhunt around all of Manhattan, and there were public tips that were being sent out so that citizens could help find the person that shot Brian Thompson. Police checked surveillance videos, and because of all the efforts that law enforcement was making, they found the person that shot him only 5 days later. That is not normal for a case, and they never go this hard for a person of color. They have the resources to let everyone help with the case. They have the money to have a manhunt all across the surrounding cities, and they have enough people in law enforcement to help. But they just don't do it for a black person. Because to them, a person of color dying is just like another animal dying, or just another statistic in their book. So families like Trey Reed's are left to investigate by themselves or just never have closure, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. Number 5. Jimmy Kimmel got kicked off his show on September 17th after making statements about how Trump doesn't seem too sad about Charlie's death. Which is true. We've all seen that clip where a news reporter asked how Trump was feeling about Charlie's death, and Trump said, "I feel great," and then went to talk about how he's so excited for the construction of his new ballroom. He does not care. He's said it in multiple interviews that he really doesn't care. So where are all the people that said Charlie shouldn't have died for having a voice? What about Jimmy getting taken off air for having a voice? Where's that crowd now? Probably at home playing victim. But Disney and ABC had Jimmy suspended indefinitely. But after a few days, they quickly brought Jimmy back on air because Disney lost about $2.5 billion just from the first night of people withdrawing their Disney Plus subscriptions. That is proof that boycotting works. I'm also really glad that everyone was pretty united on this topic anyway. Except Trump, of course. He said that any talk show that disagreed with him should have their licenses taken away. Censorship in America, everyone. Brought to you by a white man, not by an immigrant or person of color, or trans person, by the way. Number 6. Artist David killed a 15-year-old girl after grooming her and possibly getting her pregnant. Her name was Celeste, and he started dating her when she was 13. Her corpse was found in the back of his trunk on August 27th, but a lot of evidence rolled out in September, so I still want to mention this case. If David sounds familiar to you, but you can't quite remember where you heard the name, then you probably know his song Feel It from Invincible Edits, and he also had a few songs that were trending during 2020. Also, David met her when she was 13 and started dating her then, and David is 20 years old now. That is a fully grown adult. He had no business dating a minor. As the days progressed, people found a lot of evidence in his songs with lyrics like, "I don't care how long it takes," as in, he doesn't care how long it will take for Celeste to turn 18 before he can be seen in public with her without being labeled as a pedophile. He's creepy. He also made a music video, and the girl in the music video looked exactly like Celeste, and he was killing her and putting her in the trunk in the video. Music video, by the way. The evidence is just plain and clear at this point. He also had many other TikTok accounts under a few different handles, which he reposted a lot of things that were violent and just fantasizing about killing people, especially women. That is not sane behavior. He also paid some of Celeste's friends to not tell anyone about what was happening. Again, the evidence is just loud and clear right now. Apparently, Celeste was also pregnant when he killed her because baby remains were found near David's house. Sounds like he got her pregnant, didn't want to take care of the baby, or didn't want the news to come out that he was dating a minor because it is illegal and he would go to jail for having sexual relations with a minor, so he just decided to kill her. That's horrible. He decided to kill someone because he couldn't keep it in his pants. Over a child, too. Now, apparently her death certificate has come out and people are saying she wasn't pregnant, but I'm not buying it. Remember, these celebrities are rich. They can and will pay authorities to cover things up for them. David has been pronounced not guilty as of now by officials, but do remember that we are under the same system that also ruled Diddy as innocent. The system was never in favor of women and children. Now, I do want to say that I am pretty glad that everyone is publicly shaming David and dropping David's music. I didn't expect this many people to support a girl that is a victim of pedophilia, as usually the victims get blamed, so I'm really glad people are coming to their senses. But it's also unfortunate that many aren't able to see girls as victims until they're dead. Had Celeste been alive and come forward with the story of David being a pedophile, a lot of people would probably just ask for extreme evidence and still support David. It's probably be the way that people treat Chris Brown now. They don't even bat an eye, and it's uncomfortable, but it's the truth. Number 7. 1,200 Alligator Alcatraz detention camp victims had their names wiped from the database and were missing. 450 were listed as no location with call ICE for details, and around 800 showed no record on ICE database at all. Sounds like human trafficking, because if their families and friends are documented immigrants ask, "Hey, where is this person?" If they're deported, then why are they nowhere to be found even in other countries? You know what officials will say? You know what ICE will say? They'll be like, "What person? We have no record of that person being taken to our facility." And that's that. Like, "Oh, what happened at Tiananmen Square?" Nothing happened. Do you get where I'm going with this? And to be honest, the whole deportation of undocumented immigrants is actually just human trafficking disguised as following the law. As of what we know now, one of the detainees that were listed under no location at Alligator Alcatraz were being held at Camp East Montana. I can't even begin to imagine how they were being moved. We don't know if they were in chains and shackles. We don't know if they were being beaten before being thrown into the trucks. Maybe they were even dragged by their ankles out to the trucks when they were half asleep. Also, I do want to mention that Camp East Montana is able to hold 5,000 people, so there's a chance all the Alligator Alcatraz detainees were packed into two large trucks, standing shoulder to shoulder in the heat of the van and transported to the detention camps, just like the Jewish people were during the Nazi Germany. Second of all, we don't know what's happening inside of Camp East Montana. They could be dismembering every single one of them and we wouldn't know. This could be a new satellite location of the Epstein Island to sell those people to rich men for sex trafficking and we wouldn't know. You don't know what happens behind closed doors. That's the scary part. Besides the obvious reasons, this is why I will never stand for deporting people because it is just a human trafficking in disguise. Plus, they dehumanize the immigrants and then they get them far away from getting help, legal help, as they can, getting them far away from lawyers, far away from their family, barring them from the public. The public can't even get in, and of course the victims can't get out. It was never about keeping citizens safe, because if they actually cared, Trump himself would be in jail right now. Epstein too, also Diddy. Anyway, the coordinates of Camp East Montana Detention Camp is going to be below in the description box. Number 8. An Indian man was beheaded with a machete in a Dallas motel parking lot on September 10th. His name was Chandramouli Nagamalaya, and there were suspicions of it being a hate crime with the rise of hatred towards South Asians recently. Originally, the killer, Yordanis Gomez Martinez, was cleaning a room in the hotel with his coworker when Chandra went to tell the coworker to tell Yordanis to not use a broken washer machine. But Yordanis got mad because Chandra was having his coworker translate to tell him rather than telling Yordanis himself. So Yordanis went out to his car and grabbed a machete and started stabbing Chandra multiple times. Chandra ran towards the office, and his son and wife tried to stop Yordanis from continuing to be violent, but it didn't work, so Chandra ran outside to the parking lot, and Yordanis caught up with him and beheaded him. Yordanis did kick Chandra's head around and then threw it across the parking lot before putting the head in the trash. Trump has vowed for there to be tough action, but we all know it's just because he wants to push the narrative that Hispanic people are dangerous or only come here to murder people, so the masses will just go along with deporting all the Hispanic people in the US. We are not falling for that propaganda, and I know it's propaganda because Trump didn't say a single thing after Trey Reed was lynched. It's all on purpose. If he truly cared about minorities, he would have said something about Trey Reed. Number 9. A Dallas ICE facility was shot up on September 24th with the shooter having intentions to shoot ICE agents. However, 2 people that were being held in the ICE detention center were wounded and eventually died. There's no footage on this happening though, so I do wonder if ICE agents saw that the shooter was coming for them and then behind closed doors saw this as an opportunity to take their anger out on the ICE detainees, if you know what I mean. That's the scary reality of everything that's happening right now. You really don't know the truth. I know these ICE agents would not hesitate to kill an immigrant. They hate immigrants and people of color, so I would not be shocked if the ICE agents were actually the ones that shot the detainees and then blamed it on the shooter. Now, that's all of the major events, but here are micro events that are still worth mentioning. 1. Trump announced that Tylenol is what causes autism. You know, those Epstein Files must be atrocious. The distractions are not working. Number 2. TikTok has been sold to the US, and Trump has mentioned that he would make the entire For You page become everything MAGA if he could. So I wouldn't be shocked if there will be more censorship. There already is because I've barely heard anything about the October 18th No King's Day 2 protests, so that's a bit suspicious. Number 3. YouTube made a $40 million deal with Israel, and some other sources are saying it's $45 million. There is so much censorship that is about to happen. YouTube is already very censored, very heavily, so we can only expect more censorship. It's about to get a lot worse. Alright, that's all the major events that has happened in the US and has been what's widely talked about by a lot of people. Here's to hoping that October will be a lot better, and honestly, it will be because there will at least be the No King's Day protests this month. Remember, that will be linked down below in the description box, along with a few other things that I mentioned. If you stayed for this entire video, thank you so much, and please subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.